Why do our lives feel harder than we believe they're supposed to feel? Why do we have these deep callings towards something beautiful, magical, meaningful in our lives, and then why does it seem so hard to reach? Why does it seem like it never comes to us even when we know somewhere deep inside it's what we're meant for? If it's our sole purpose, if it's what we're meant for, then shouldn't it feel easier? Shouldn't it be easier to call it in, to manifest it, to have the things we feel so deeply down to our bones drawn to? The answer is yes. And after 37 years of trying to just do things right, take the right steps, follow the path I thought would eventually bring me what I knew I was meant for, and it not working at all, I had a sudden spiritual awakening. And then I knew why it hasn't been working the way we've been doing things. The reason why is exactly what I talk about in this podcast and exactly what I teach my clients how to find. Ancient alchemy, cosmic wisdom, and real-world teachings for women who know they're meant for so much more. I'm Heather Allison, and this is The Golden Path. Welcome home. Hey, lovelies. Welcome back to The Golden Path with Heather Allison. This is, again, you're probably just going to get used to me saying this because there is no one format for this podcast, apparently. This is a little different from anything I've done on here so far. As you've noticed, this isn't really the kind of podcast where I hop on here and I do interviews with other people. It really has been more of a vehicle, a channel for me to get information to you about this work, to teach you some things, to share my thoughts, to share some of my teachings and insights from an energetic repatterning and archetypal perspective to help you have access to the work if you're not quite ready to dive into the courses and experience the transformation that's found there. In this episode, I hopped on the line with a woman that I have just met probably maybe about a month ago, and found myself looking into a mirror. She and I are both mystics. We are both doing work centering in this archetypal realm, in working with the divine feminine, divine masculine, as well as the oneness archetype, or the 0 point archetype, or as she calls it, the sacred third archetype. So it's really fascinating to be dropping into somebody who brings through such a similar thread of teachings and such a similar frequency and such similar ideas. It was really interesting. I'm laughing because prepare yourself for a conversation between two mystics who do such similar work, because we got so incredibly esoteric and so incredibly deep. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I would love to invite you to let yourself listen, not from your heads, but from a part of you that is much, much more ancient. A part of you that remembers the truth of your divine self, the truth of who you really are, the truth of your power, the truth of your abilities that you've never been given permission to know fully. Because you will find that some of this episode may not make sense to your linear mind. It may not make sense to your rational thinking. And it's actually perfect. This happens sometimes in the work that I do when I'm working with clients. In fact, I made mention of this on this episode, in this conversation, which is that I sometimes have women saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't follow. I don't know what you're talking about right now, but something is vibrating within me. I know that I need more. I know that this is calling me and I can't understand it and I can't explain it. And the reason that is so amazing and so beautiful and so important to understand is, and to let yourself follow, is that one of the things that happens in this work is that there's a bit of a scrambling. There's a bit of like a dismantling of the stranglehold of our linear mind. This is part and parcel of this over-masculinized world that we have been taught and trained and conditioned to only live our life and only value the things that we can make sense of, the things that we can rationalize, the things that make sense to our linear and rational mind. And the reason this is so important is because that is part of releasing the hold of this wounded paradigm. Rational thinking is important and it's valuable, and we're not trying to move away from that. We are simply trying to allow you to tap into something beyond just the rational mind, because that is where your limitlessness comes in. That is where your ability to co-create with the quantum realm is found. That is where your ability to remember the truth of who you really are, the truth of what your soul came here to bring through. And that is where you have access to everything it is that you have been wishing for that doesn't exist in the linear and rational realm, that isn't something that you can just plot out on a spreadsheet. And those are things like love and your intuition and knowing with deep, visceral certainty that you're on the right path, and knowing where to put your foot next with deep, visceral certainty. And joy and pleasure and creation of abundance, co-creating with the quantum realm, things that you know you're meant for, but you can't see yet. So I suppose this is just a fair warning that this might be a little scrambling for your brain, and it's on purpose. And so I invite you to take some time here before you listen, to drop into your body, to breathe much deeper, to let yourself open, to receive, to let yourself start breathing all the way down into your sacral bowl, to close your eyes, release the part of you that needs to understand, and let yourself turn on the part of you that just simply gets to receive. And come back to this as many times as you need to, as often as you need to let more and more of the message and more of the understanding crystallize in your mind, in that part of your rational thinking mind, because it will. I promise you it will. It always does. Enjoy, loves. I'm really excited to be doing this with you because it feels like a stretch. It feels like something I haven't done before, because this podcast so far has been a teaching vehicle and kind of sharing this work, sharing the frequency, sharing the transmission. It's been a way for me to reach women who maybe haven't been able to dive into the work that I do, or want to get to know it a little bit better before they do, and things like that. And so I don't know that I'm ever going to turn it into a typical kind of podcast where I do a lot of interviews. So this is really interesting. And also one of the reasons why, when you approached me with this idea, I was like, yes, and I just feel right for it to be an interview. And so I love what we decided to do here, which was just like, let's just co-create. Let's just hang out for, 40 minutes or whatever it turns out to be, hang out and like shoot the shit, like share, have a conversation between mystics and women who are doing the work and sharing this work with the world, and see what just wants to be shared.
Yeah, this sounds perfect, because usually I know exactly what I'm gonna say and like the structure, but this time I'm kind of like, whoa, okay, I'm leaning into the mystery here. Like I totally, like, it's almost like I'm like a blank slate right now, which I feel like probably both of us are tapping into that, the third component anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and I think that's kind of the point. Maybe that's what was being asked for, was to model a little bit more of this energy, because there's such a tendency, especially in business, the business realm, the business paradigm as it is, to really like, well, but I have to be ready. Well, but I have to be prepared. Well, but I need to have everything in order first before I can blah, blah, whatever. And that's one of the things I know I'm kind of here in service of, is calling bullshit on that. One of the things I'm kind of here to turn on its head is that none of those rules that we've been conditioned to believe are required. are necessary. It doesn't matter how it happens, doesn't matter how we create our business, doesn't matter how we are showing up. It doesn't matter how we do anything, as long as how we're doing it is letting ourselves be guided, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. That's the part that I feel where a lot of the conscious entrepreneurs are heading into. Like that is the
Mm-hmm.
space, because we've and I've been coached over and over by other coaches, like you've got to burn more rules than you realize. Maybe just burn the shit out of all of them.
Yes. I love that. That feels like it needs to be a tagline of some sort. So, um, honestly, let me back up here, because everybody here, I think, knows who I am, although maybe they don't. So let me just start by, I'll introduce myself. I'm Heather Allison. I am the creator of the mystery school and a destiny accelerator called Golden Goddess. I also have a number of other offerings and courses that I provide and offer to women who are wanting to shift the paradigm that they live their lives in, that their reality is based in, because it's been way too hard so far, because it's like they know and they can feel somewhere in their belly and in their bones that they're meant for something so much more beautiful, so much more powerful, so much more magical, so much more meaningful or impactful. And it's like, why can't I move the needle? Why isn't this happening? Do I actually have to settle for less than this? What is it that I'm missing? I don't understand. And this is basically where I come in. I call myself an energy repatterning coach and a divine feminine shaman. The work that I do is really deeply bringing through what I call the sacred feminine or the divine feminine, and repatterning our entire energetics at like 7 different levels, so that we can really be exactly who we're meant to be in this lifetime and be operating in what I call our original energetic blueprint, so that we get to be doing the things that we know that we're here to do. And I work with what I call the kind of archetypal trinity. So the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and then what I call either the 0 point archetype or the oneness archetype, or I call her the cosmic feminine as well. That's a little bit about me. So do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. And Heather, that was a hell of an introduction. My goodness.
I just started
So,
going.
yes, it is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. So, I am Juliet Tang, and I call myself a feminine business coach because I wear a lot of titles, but
Mhm.
this is the easiest one for people to understand. And my work is also about serving the divine feminine in a very different way, which is what makes it interesting. So I serve the feminine by really helping my clients to activate their divine masculine. Since I am in a world of business, of helping women entrepreneurs create more time, more money, more freedom, and taking their businesses and their income and their impact and their soul's full expression and expansion to the next level, I find that a lot of the women who come to me have all of that, the desire, the expansion, that type of surrender, that type of flow energy. Yet at the same time, they are really needing the support to activate that sacred masculine energy. And on earth, the sacred masculine energy looks like structure, it looks like steps, it looks like strategies that are aligned, and then it looks like inspired action steps.
Mhm.
And ultimately, for me, the work that I do, the deeper level that is beyond the money, the freedom, is that I'm here, just like Heather, to activate, I call it the sacred third, which is really the place where we come as a union, inside of ourselves, that we are neither the feminine nor the masculine, but we operate from the wholeness or the oneness
Mhm.
of who we are. And the way that we journey to that point, actually, at least in my own journey, and I've supported a lot of the clients through this, is that we actually activate our feminine values first. We activate our desire, we activate, our willingness to surrender. And once we can surrender enough, that activates the masculine. And we kind of submit in a way, in a very loving way, not the world's definition of submitting, but we really submit to the masculine, and we allow ourselves to be led by doing the things that we're called to do, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they feel like a stretch. And once we activate and embody both aspects, the yin and the yang of who we are, we realize that it's neither or, because we're so much more than that. We're the totality of the masculine, the feminine, and then we start to operate from a place that is even, I would say, not a higher version, because I feel that's so misleading, that thinking that if it's a higher version, then that means I'm not good enough yet. I would say it's a fuller version, it's a fuller expression, and it's a place where it is more expanded, which I call the flow state. So ultimately, that's the mission of my work, even though, very much on the surface, it is business coaching, and it is to help people heal their relationship with money so that they can make more of that. And it is all about, fulfilling that business vision. But I feel like we all have deeper layers of what we do, because I was just listening to you, and your work is totally not surface. Maybe like on the surface, you share that it is like the golden goddess course, and it's for people to for women to get in touch with their feminine. But I feel like there's so much more underneath all of that, and I would love to learn more about what is the essence of your work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many things. It's so funny. Like, these are the conversations that this is where I wish my brain was like, I don't know. There are so many places I wanted to go, like, yeah, and I want to have a conversation about that part of the thing that you just said. And then there's like 5 of them. So I'm like, where do we
Yeah.
and it's just so incredible. I loved this. As soon as you and I started talking, I was blown away by how much similarity there is. And we talked about this, like how similar our channels are, or how much we must be tapping into some similar thread, cosmic thread,
Yeah.
if you
Oh,
will.
yeah.
You know, but yeah, it is so much deeper. And that's, I mean, there's part of me that wishes, and again, this is kind of like what we were just talking about flipping the expectations and the rules of things on their head. There's a part of me that wishes that I had this really lovely little, perfectly tied up in a nice little bow kind of way of saying what this work is. But again, I feel like that would be such a disservice to how big it is. And so one of the things that because I was fighting myself around that, I kept wanting to go like, well, how do I bring it all the way down here? How do I make it simple? How do I make it something that people can understand? How do I? But what I found, for at least for me, and the thread that wants to come through me, is I'm calling women into the mystery. And so there's a part of this that actually has to be speaking to and from this place of the mystery of much more than what our brains want to make sense of. And that's one of the things that I found in doing audio work the way that I do, is it becomes a transmission. It actually starts to, I just said this to you before we started recording, is like it becomes kind of a scrambling to our linear minds, because the linear mind is the thing that's been running the show for thousands of years, right? We've been
Yes.
boxed in this cage of this limited capacity to understand, because there's so much more to understand. There's infinitely more to understand. And so one of the things that I've found that happens as women let themselves start to come into this work, even like I have so many women who are like, I have no idea what you're saying, but I know that I need more of it. And I'm like, good, then it's working, because that's the key. That is for me the sign that the linear mind is starting to be scrambled, and something deeper is listening. Some deeper part of you, part of your bones, your cells, your belly is listening, and you're starting to let it speak to you in ways that we've been typically shutting it off and shutting it down. So yeah, there's so much more, and it's so much deeper. The basis for how I kind of describe what this work is very similar to what you were just talking about. Of course, I feel like we're going to say this all day.
Mm-hmm.
All time is connecting us to, like I said, our original energetic blueprint, which is that we are the Trinity. We are these divine beings. We are our divine selves, which are, like you said, this beautiful marriage of not just the divine feminine and divine masculine, but also of the 0 point or oneness archetype that birthed them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And allowing ourselves to tap into that and come back into, and I loved what you said, not necessarily higher, but fuller or more whole, right?
Yes.
Into our wholeness in that way. I just have found so much that it's like, it just slingshots us through so much of the stuff that we try so hard to shift and so hard to heal in kind of trying to get at them at a, and again, I know this, we're not really talking hierarchically, although kind of we are, at a lower level, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? So one of the things I thought that was so interesting that you said was like, well, I heard you say that you really help them activate their divine masculine. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
originally going to say, it's so interesting how you and I seem to kind of come into the same wholeness, but kind of through opposite sides, through
Yes,
opposite.
yes,
But then you said you activate their feminine values first. So we really
yes.
actually are doing the same thing. Can you say more about that?
Yes. So I feel like as human beings, we are kind of living in polarities because this is the duality that a lot of the spiritual teachers talk about, right? We are in a universe of duality, literally. There's dark,
Mhm.
there's light, there's energy, there's matter, there's spirit, there's human. And personally, the reason why this is so fascinating to me as a business coach is that I am born with extremely polarizing archetypes. So personally, I have the high priestess archetype, which is all about being and a channeling, and I can be in that space all day. At the same time, I have that high achiever archetype, and it took me many
Mm.
years to alchemize those two. And then again, I have that healer archetype, then I have that leader archetype. So my entire life has been very much all about alchemizing, has been about integrating these two polarizing energies. So the journey was really for me to come to this understanding that, you know what, these two polarities within me are the two polarities in the universe. But rather than acting just from one extreme or one end, the lesson, or more like the soul's, I suppose, the soul's contract here for me is to come to a place of integration. And
Yeah.
once I embody that integration, I then realize that both gave birth to a higher entity. And that just reminds me of um, the story of goddess Isis and
Mhm.
Osiris. And, goddess Isis represents the divine feminine, and Osiris is the masculine. And when they united and when they gave birth to Horus, Horus is the sun child. So one of his eyes is the moon, and the other eye is the sun. He is literally the embodiment of both, which is not one plus one equals two. It's a synergetic co creation that is one plus one equals a million or a billion or a
Yeah.
trillion,
Or
because
infinite.
that infinite,
Right.
because that infinite is what has given birth to everything, to every single expression, to every single matter on earth. So, and the soul, my hardest and my most potent medicine that I deliver is really about returning to this place and understanding how to alchemize these two energies in the form of business, money, impact, leadership, but also in a form of I work with healers and coaches who are kind of like in the space of wanting this, but then feeling shame of the other, and eventually coming to the place whereas, I'm saying I am all of it and more and more and more. And this is what expansion, this is expansion. This is what expansion is. This is that desire to always be more. That's why I used to use the word higher. I never do. I don't do it anymore. It's all about fuller, because we're giving birth to fuller expressions of who we are in this lifetime. And it's a continuous journey. So it just
Beautiful.
never ends. Yeah. And
Yes.
that's kind of like, and it's so, I'm losing myself when I'm channeling this. And at the same time, it feels like it is the soul speaking, and my mind is really not registering
Mhm.
exactly what I'm saying. This is just really allowing that to come out without having the mind tap in and start to make sense of it or start to like filter it through past conditioning, because I feel that's exactly what has gotten all of us to the place that we're today. Well, the world, right? We heavily focused on that outdated masculine energy, which is all about rationality, logic, and linear thinking and conditioning. And I feel we're here to pattern interrupt. I'm also a hypnotist, so I like to use the term pattern interrupt, and you use the term to be pattern. We're
Mhm.
ultimately talking about the same thing.
We really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that makes me giggle because this is so like me. Like half the time I'm channeling stuff, I'm like, I have no idea what I just said, what just came out of my mouth.
So I'm super curious to like understand more, to like learn more about how this is showing up in your work, because I feel like that's something that wants to be talked about. You know, we our businesses are expressions of who we are. But when we're going through, like when we're being pulled in all kinds of directions, our business, our income, all of that gets affected. So
Mhm.
how have you been alchemizing within so that your business is the purest and fullest expression of who you are internally?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And the shortest answer I can come up with, which is so hard for a mystic, I feel like
I
is
know.
is essentially being willing and able and expanding our, actually this is perfect for something that I was going to speak to in what we just talked about a minute ago. Being willing and able and having the energetic capacity to hold space for both,
Hmm.
and that takes a lot of willingness to see when we're getting overly attached to anything, whether it's an
Hmm.
outcome or a process or an expectation or something we desire, quote unquote, it coming in a certain package, right? Which I guess is attachment to outcome, and really finding the place over and over and over and over again of neutrality, where it's not a complacent non-charge. It's like, if that makes sense, meaning it's not just, we're not just sitting here in this like outdated version or idea of what surrender is. It's like, well, I guess I'm not gonna do anything. It's no, can you actually hold space for both of these opposite things, what you desire and what you don't desire, what you fear, maybe the two different outcomes, whatever it looks like, to be perfect? Can you hold that much expansion energy, really, which is what we're talking about? And
Hmm.
exactly what you were just saying, which is, more is just about expansion. And what was coming to me around that is, yeah, because for every step into the light you take, this is kind of coming from my shaman self, for every step into the light that you take, you're also going to be asked to take a step into the dark, into the shadow.
Yes.
And
Yes.
be willing to be there, be willing to hold space for it as much as you are willing to stand in more and more light. Like, I don't have a problem with saying higher, and again, this is kind of coming from the shaman part of my work, because you're also holding space for more and more of the lower frequency as you're
Yes.
going higher. And that's part of it. That's actually part of the integration, is not this idea of spiritual bypassing, which is, I'm
Hmm.
just going to go higher because everything below this is not good enough or is not as good. I actually am cool with saying higher, and I talk about that quite a bit, because it's, for me, it is true when we're dealing with these, like a, quote unquote, higher levels of archetypal patterning. But all that does is it creates kind of, this is the metaphor I always like to use, it creates a zipper. When you really start working at this, the higher level of these archetypes, the original or the primordial patterning of divine feminine, divine masculine, and oneness archetype or 0 point archetype, it creates this amazing zipper where, just by letting ourselves embody more of that trinity, we create healing and integration and alignment all the way down,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That makes total sense. And I love the imagery of a zipper. I never thought about it before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, just to maybe hopefully clarify what I'm trying to say about your question is
Yeah.
there is so much in business in particular that tries to have us believe that this is the one way that you have to be doing this, or this is like,
Hmm.
have a goal and hit it, and if you don't hit it, then figure out what you're doing wrong and keep trying for that, or whatever. And all of these things are so, I mean, when you even just feel in your body the energy of like plowing forward, pushing forward toward some one specific goal, you can feel the constriction
Hmm.
that happens, the
Absolutely.
narrowing in your energy field. And so, can you, for me, this is how this shows up for me in business, can you actually hold space for all of it? for it just being perfect,
Yeah.
and for whatever needs to happen here to be exactly perfect, and to not then, get when it doesn't, quote unquote, go the way that you think that it's supposed to go or the way that you wanted it to go, noticing how fast we typically shut ourselves down and
Mm.
get beat up on ourselves, or feel like we're doing everything wrong, or completely change approaches because, well, obviously I'm failing in this direction, so I have to do something else. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes total sense. And what's really coming up to complement what you're saying is that I feel, especially the way that it's showing up in business, whereas, there's this rigid goal. I'm here to crush it. I'm here to hit it. And if I don't, that means something I'm doing is wrong. And I feel, from the wholeness place where we're operating from, if we can really hold that space for the wholeness to show
Mm-hmm.
up consistently, there's nothing wrong with having a desire and allowing ourselves to co-create what wants to be co-created. But what happens is that so many entrepreneurs, so many women, not even entrepreneurs, just women and men, are coming from the place of, they're really coming from the place of where they haven't owned that wholeness. So the moment that the co-creation looks different
Yes.
from the way that they envisioned it to be, automatically the old programs that are rooted in a patriarchy, really, that like they're rooted in that outdated masculine energy of, I need to beat myself up for this, I need to really talk, like there's something wrong with me, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, what did I do wrong? And automatically that, like you said, that just shuts down the entire process.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times what we don't realize is that that is the outdated masculine energy that is in all of us, in both men and women, that is asking us to shift, and that's inviting us to shift into really a more wholesome based business model, the way that we're operating. And it's very interesting because even though we're kind of using very polarizing language, right, the masculine, the feminine, in the end it's almost like it's really neither. Like I can't just say to my clients, okay, now you got to be in your feminine, now you got to be in your masculine, because even that feels very limiting to me. And that is more on a strategic level. I can coach them on that. On an energetic level, it is never that black and white. It is
Yeah.
always, okay, there's more. So I feel like, my work is really like, it's all about holding space, like you said, holding space for the duality to show up, but all at the same time holding space for that non-duality, for that oneness. Because and I was just on a call with my clients in a mastermind, business accelerator mastermind, and one of the standards that I gave them was, you've got to lean into your multi-dimensional nature. Meaning there's the mind that is kind of like repeating the old stories. Then there's the heart that is kind of like looking at this desire and leaning into the feminine. And it's just like, this desire is looking to be birthed through me. And then there's the soul that is on the level of, this is my expression. I want to play. I want to have fun, because the soul just wants to have fun. It's almost like an inner child. And then there is that, like the God self that's within. So eventually, the way that we've been taught how to do business is completely linear. It is just to kind of like treat it like a mental game, which is so, so, so limiting.
Yes.
And I feel for conscious entrepreneurs, the way that we're really heading, or we're paving the way of doing business while leaning into our multidimensional nature. So let's say we have a goal. We didn't crush the goal, right? The language that many people like to use. We didn't hit the goal. Can we hold space for the mind while it's repeating stories maybe that needs to be processed and purged, which is, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? While simultaneously be in that fuller space of who we are, and say, well, this is the way. I'm curious, because this is how this co-creation is showing up. I'm curious to know what is in there for me. So it is essentially like what you were saying, that, we can be in the high and the low at the same time, which is really, we're being our divine selves and the human selves all at the same time. And that takes a tremendous amount of kind of like, we are holding that energetic space first for that type of expansion, for that type of surrender, and also for that type of multidimensionality to express through us. And then that comes into our business. And then we hold that space for our clients as well. Right? Does
Yes.
that sound like something that you also do?
Totally, completely. Yeah. And it like just kind of speaking to what you were just talking about a second ago, which is it sounds like this polarizing language. Okay, so this is an interesting way of, and I use this metaphor a lot. So you said something about we're using a lot of polarizing language and talking about the masculine and feminine. And you said something
Mm-hmm.
about how while you can say be a little bit more in your feminine or be a little bit more in your masculine, it's not that simple. It's a lot more complex.
Yeah.
And so one of the metaphors I use when I'm trying to describe this state that we're in as humans, this world that we're in right now, which is this, what I call an over masculinized
Oh
state.
God.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Over
One of the metaphors I
masculinized.
use to
Yeah.
describe that is basically like, it's kind of like if you imagine we've been trying to run a race with one leg. And while
Mm.
you could cross the finish line, you can get there if you could hop your entire way there, that's fine. You can. It's not going to feel good. You're not going to get there very fast. You're probably going to hurt yourself and throw your entire body, your spine out of whack, and you're going to have all sorts of other problems happen along the way. That means you're not operating the fullness of the abilities that you came here to have. And
Yes.
so this kind of feels similar. Like, yeah, we could say like, now use your right leg, now use your left leg, now use your right leg again, now your left leg. But it's not as simple as just those legs. As anyone knows, like there's so much more, that there's a core that you have to work with too. There's your belly muscles, there's your spine has to have muscles around it. Like the whole of your body has to be working together in order to
Yes.
actually really, like, especially run, but even walk, but like especially run if you want to get anywhere anytime fast, anytime soon. And so it's kind of the same thing. Like, of course we can speak about these things as the masculine or the feminine, but there's also this where they meet, how they dance, because they're always dancing, how they dance
Yes.
together, and what happens in between. And it's so complex, like when, and my brain just went completely off the planet with this, but it is so complex when you get into it, and it gets so quantum that it can be really hard to understand and really hard to be with, and it doesn't matter. Like that's one of the things
Yes.
that like my clients need to understand too, is I hold a container for them and reflections for them and teachings and transmissions and shamanic journeys and everything for them, so that they are reprogrammed at so many different levels that they don't have to understand how this works.
Mm.
They get to understand
Yes.
it. They don't have to understand it. It becomes like your body. You don't think about, well, now I need to breathe in. Well, now I need to breathe out. And it becomes like that. Like you just are tapping into the wholeness of your system, the way it was meant to operate.
Yeah, and it makes sense and it doesn't make any sense. And I really love how like the bigger picture is that I came into the space completely open and completely surrendering with zero idea what was going to be birthed through this co-creation.
I know.
So for me, so like it's almost like I feel like, okay, so the energy, the essence of what you were saying, if I were to capture it, is that you don't have to always understand what's going on in order for you to step into that fuller version of you. Because for me, the reason why I do so much, and like part of my expertise is really embodiment. It's to embody that wholeness,
Yes.
embody the wealth consciousness, embody your feminine values. It is all about our embodiment automatically acts as a permission slip for others, even if their brains cannot follow, even if they cannot put this into like, okay, so the step one is this, step two is that, right? And that the way that we're being is opening a portal. And this is the only work, this is part of like the part of the work that we're doing. Because the moment that the portal is open, the other people can activate themselves through this portal however they choose to, however they're ready to, and whatever it is that they're willing to receive. So just like those people that are listening, the women that are listening to this conversation right now, this is the portal that we're opening, and we're just kind of being led by this co-creation, having zero idea where we're heading, but this portal is where the activation is.
Yeah.
And I feel like on the highest level, this is what we came here to do. At least
And I,
partially. I can't verbalize all of it
mhm.
because it's just way too much. But this is the portal part. This is very, very shamanic for both of us.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, just to kind of bring it down to earth for people too, is in essence, it is so complex, because when I said that my brain was kind of going off like into the quantum realm, it's because I can feel and see the sacred dance happening between the masculine and feminine into like molecular structure, into like the
Mm,
molecular level. Like it's so, there's so much, it's so
yeah.
fine and so like infinite at the same time. And there's no reason why you need to understand that. Like it's fun, like
Yes.
let yourself, it's okay if this entire conversation is, what are these women talking about right now? I don't
They're just
understand.
babbling.
If you can just allow yourself to understand, to not understand what we're saying, if you can allow that, that is okay, and just see if you can close your eyes, breathe a little bit deeper, place your hand on your lower belly perhaps, and draw your attention down here, and just see if you can receive what we're saying somewhere different than your brain, and actually allow yourself to be kind of, it's kind of like you're being like your particles are being pulled apart so that they can be rearranged. If you can let yourself imagine that even while you're listening to this whole thing, this trinity is how you slingshot, it is how you move past, like, and fast track, if you will. But you can't just focus on only the 0 point archetype, just like you can't only focus on the masculine, which is what we've been doing for thousands of years, just like you
Yeah.
can't only focus on the feminine, which is what I think a lot of teachers are trying to do, um,
Yes.
and teaching only partial of this work, a partial like version
Yes.
of this work. And the metaphor that came out for that was, because there's a lot of metaphor that happens over here, was it's like a bird in flight. You have a right wing
Mm,
and a left wing, and you need both of them to operate together. But there's also a third component, which is that a bird isn't trying to fly in a vacuum. There's air. There's air that it's flying against, that it's beating its wings against. It's creating friction. It's creating, it's something to fly within, right? It can't fly
mm-hmm.
space. Like your
Yes.
wings in space doesn't do anything. And so this, for me, that in that metaphor, the 0 point or the oneness archetype is the air. And while it's important, obviously, because we couldn't fly without it, it's not, if you only focused on the air while you were trying to figure out how to fly, you'd be missing the point entirely, that you have these two beautiful wings that you need to actually start operating in harmony in order to fly with the
Mm-hmm.
air. But you also can't not think about the air either. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's all
And it's just there. Yeah. And
mm-hmm.
what's really coming up when you were saying all of that is that it's not something to be mastered, because the idea of mastery is still kind of coming from one of the polarities. I would say the masculine. It's not something to be mastered because it's a beingness.
Mm-hmm.
This is the place to be. And the beingness then gives birth to the doing and the
Mm-hmm.
having and the creating and the co-creating.
Mm-hmm.
So that place, even though you said that, there is no fast track, and this is the fast track. The fast track is to be, just to be in this place where everything is birthed. And then once you're in that state, it gives birth to whatever it is that is inspired to come out of that.
Yeah.
So it's really, there is no mastery of that oneness. It just is. It's beyond the mastery.
Yeah, and I do feel like there's because I agree with you, it is kind of a misnomer because it's literally like the more you, and I've experienced this myself just in my own spiritual awakening, the more you know, the more there is to learn. It's like your brain just goes, oh my God, there's so much. But there is, I feel like you could look at it as a mastery in so far as it's a mastery of presence, of willingness to
Yes,
presence continually. Like
yes.
again, here come more metaphors, but it's kind of the difference in like if some dude was like, well, I see that a bird flies with two wings, so I'm going to build myself some wooden wings and I'm going to try to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And he steps off a building and like, okay, well, good luck with that. But and then that
Yeah.
versus a bird, which is what you don't see happening as readily, is that there's not just these wings that they have, but there are thousands of feathers, not to mention thousands of muscles that operate each of those, and they move and shift with the air that's passing, that you're passing through. Do you know what I mean? So it's a
Yes,
constant
yes,
presence with
yes,
what's here, and how do I make the subtle adjustments so that I'm continually in alignment, so that I continue to fly, right? I can continue to fly
yes,
and soar.
yes. And that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like not so much, it's tapping into and embodying the totality of who we are, of who
Yeah.
we be, right?
Yeah.
It's the totality of who we be. And yes, presence, I mean, being so present, that's when we're 100% present, we're actually in the space where there is no beginning or end, which means we're
Yes.
in our infinite selves.
Ooh,
So
chills.
you mentioned it, you mentioned it, that presence is actually the key to unlock that type of flow state, that type of, totality of the being state. And presence is what unlocks potential, which this is the potential. This is our human potential.
Yeah. And honestly, presence is very much what you could consider if you wanted kind of a real world stand-in, if you will, for what like a 0 point or a oneness archetype is. Presence could be that. It really could,
Yes, yes.
right? At least one
Yeah.
facet of it. It could be, because that's like you just said, it's the where there is no beginning and no end, which I got chills at when you said that, which is like the alpha and the omega, which is exactly what the 0 point is. It is allness and it is nothingness. It is the beginning and the end. It is infinite expansion and infinite contraction all at once, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the state where so many people are looking to tap into to fulfill their potential. But it's not so much about doing, it's about the doing that is birthed from the being in this state, and
Yeah.
just really embodied wholeness, embodied union, embodied totality,
Yeah.
just
And
all.
when you can be in that space, here's the kind of like, why does that even matter, you guys? Like it's when you can be in that space, then you are literally and this kind of brings us back to what we talked about earlier, when you can be in that space from a place of it's all perfect, no matter what, then you're operating with your wholeness, the fullness of it, everything that you are, every aspect of your power. There is no part of you or the universe that you are shutting down, right?
Yes, yes. And this is also the leaning into the multidimensional self.
Yeah.
And imagine, imagine operating, imagine creating a business, creating your income, and creating your messages and your teachings from the space where it's truly limitless, right? This is where all of us get to channel our best stuff.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
limitless space. It's the limitless channel. I've noticed that even for myself, just in my business, like, cause I still get pulled out of my center quite a bit, especially with like the new shiny thing that somebody else is doing or whatever. And just comparison. I have a really strong comparison wound that I'm moving through and healing,
Mm,
which is probably because I bring through duality, right? So I actually have to master, speaking of mastery, I have to actually get much more powerful in being able to hold my space and be with opposite, right? Or other without being in
Mm-hmm.
comparison, because that's kind of the wounded form of duality, if that makes sense.
Yes.
One of them,
Yes, of course.
not one of them. Um,
Yeah.
but is I get taken out of my center by like, oh, but so and so is doing this. Maybe I should do something like that, or maybe I need to look into that, or something. It's also kind of a little bit of the FOMO. But every time that I do, every time that I let myself be taken out of my center and my channel of limitlessness or wholeness, or this ability to be with both sides, and if that makes sense, totally spin out and start struggling. And it's always
Yes.
when I come back into my center and back into my channel, which is I mean, this is what you and I both do, it sounds like, is help our clients come into and stay more readily in this place. um,
Yes.
then everything starts flowing, and then I'm shocked and I'm surprised, and it always happens this way. Like, um, my business starts growing in ways that I'm like, holy crap, I couldn't even see that coming. I didn't know that was even possible. And I get to be surprised because the channel's on. The I'm in flow. I'm in that flow state that we all strive for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yes.
in alignment with the universe, and then I get to start co-creating with it instead of pushing against it and trying to force it
Yes.
into a box, right?
Oh, that is so beautiful. That is so needed in the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And all the
It's
things.
so needed. Yeah, in
All
all things,
the
in all things. And you literally just channeled some of the stuff that I wrote in the welcome orientation for my mastermind, which is to always come back to your center. I
yeah.
literally wrote finding your stillness, finding your softness, and finding your calmness in the middle of chaos. Because when we're up leveling, it is bound to get a little chaotic because everything is birthed through chaos. We're disassembling our past and we're stepping into a new future and we're putting the pieces together differently. So I literally use the metaphor of a Shaolin monk. And the monk is just in the middle of, the monk is observing everything that is going on around him,
Yeah.
while at the same time he is completely centered in whatever, in that wholeness space, I would say, in that nothingness space.
Mm-hmm.
And this way he sees everything, but he doesn't react. And he is in a way, I say this to my clients a lot, we are staying in our own lane.
Yeah.
This is our lane. This is where we are. This is where we belong. This is how we get to spiral upward, not by crossing into someone else's lane on the highway.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the things that happens with women, especially I mean, everywhere, but man, especially in the entrepreneurial realm, and it really does feel like more and more women are stepping into that realm of their power these days, because
Mm-hmm.
they know and they're starting to remember that they have a medicine to bring to this world, and it needs to come out, and it needs to be theirs, and it needs to not be just supporting someone else in their soul path. It needs to be kind of their own
Yes.
frequency and medicine coming through. But one of the things I notice happens a lot is, how the hell do I even find what my center is? How do I even find what my medicine is? How do I even know what my lane looks like? And that for me is one of the biggest disservices of this over masculinized world, is that masculinization, masculine energy, and again, we all have both of them, but it's very focused on what's outside of us. And so it is so
Yes.
much a matter of, like, it can be really scary, I think, for some women, going like, okay, great, come into my center, stay in my lane, but I don't know what my lane is. So I feel like I can't let go of the railing of what's out there. And it's like, it can be really, I'm getting a little off track, but one of the disservices is we've been trained to look outside of ourselves so much that we don't even know how to
Mm-hmm.
find what our lane is. And that's one of the pieces that I
Yeah.
help my clients with too, as well. And I know that you do too. Do you want to, as we're kind of coming to our hour mark, do you want to share one of the things that you have opened that you'd like to invite some women into right now?
So currently I have actually a longer container that is, I feel like it sums up everything that we've just said, even though on the surface, I would say the focus for me is to take women to quantum leap in their being, in their business, in their income, and in their impact underneath. It's impossible for us to create the type of wealth that we're looking to create without first coming back to our wholeness, without first reclaiming and re-embodying that wholeness. So the longer container is a 6 month offer, which is a very intimate and powerful journey that is under the title of business coaching, but it's really called the Illuminated Empress. And this is
Ooh.
for that woman who is looking to come back to her most illuminated and fullest self through the growth, and the leaping in her business and income and impact. So every aspect of her being is going to illuminate as a result of this, even though it is still under the umbrella of business and feminine leadership, and just like fulfilling that higher business vision type of coaching. So, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but this
It
is the
does.
way that it
Beautiful.
wanted to come through.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, and it sounds so cool because like I love you have Illuminated Empress and I have Golden Goddess. And so they feel like
Oh
they're
my God.
like so I actually have two, well, I'm about to open the gates for a second course as well, but Golden Goddess is open for 2020. I have 9 spots still open. I take a maximum of 20 women, and we typically start early spring, but we always drop in with bonus calls every month before we start officially. So we're already doing some of that, and they're already getting to play with some of their early, like their pre-work bonuses and things like that. But yeah, Golden Goddess is also my longest container. It's for the bulk of 2020. So it's a 9-month course. Obviously,
Mm.
anybody who joins me now gets my support for about a year for the same cost. And it really is a destiny accelerator. One of the things that I've noticed about this work is women come into this particular course, especially wanting various things, whether it's I want to stop struggling in my business and grow. I want to grow my business. I want to finally have abundance and soulful success. Like I know is possible for me, but I can't seem to move the needle, or I'm killing myself trying or whatever. Or they come in because they want to meet their romantic partner finally, or they want to heal their marriage finally because it's starting to crumble and it seems like it's a lost cause, or they come in because they like the mystical aspect. Like I know that there's more for me to receive in my intuition and I have no idea how to access it, or they even just come in for just knowing that there's more for them and they maybe don't even know how to put a finger on what that is. They just know that it's supposed to feel better. They're supposed to feel better. There's supposed to be a much more beautiful life in store for them. And they're tired of settling for not feeling good and not being in their greatest joy, if you will. But
Mm.
it really, whatever path they enter in through, they end up somewhat surprised because multiple parts of their life start to kind of coalesce and harmonize and rise together. It really becomes this destiny accelerator in ways that they a lot of times haven't even seen coming, if that makes sense.
Yes, that
Where,
makes total sense because that's surrendering into the unknown and it just
yeah,
allowing it to unfold.
yeah, and it's one of the more beautiful parts about this course is that we come in so often with this idea, this limited idea of what it's supposed to look like. And most of the time we've been trying to take on templates from everybody else around us, thinking like, maybe that'll get me there. Well, maybe this one will get me there. Maybe this is
Mm-hmm.
going to work for me finally. And what this course does is really like, I mean, it's basically unplugging you from all of that wounded conditioning and plugging you into a reality where you get to be the vessel to receive your highest destiny, your greatest
Oh,
destiny.
so beautiful. So,
Um,
so, so beautiful.
it's my favorite thing, which I could talk about it forever. It's literally, it's my baby. It's my signature, my baby. But so that's open. We do have 9 seats left. I'm also about to open a course called Goddesspreneur sometime later this month, I think, much more focused on just the business end of things and creating those kind of shifts in our business specifically and doing business in a feminine paradigm. But I have not
Oh,
opened
that
it yet.
sounds really delicious. That is so needed.
Thank you. Well, yeah, obviously this is what you do. So I'm like, yes, so what you do too. But yeah, so I have waitlist open for that right now.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And it sounds like, again, our work, even though like we channel through different portals,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's really the same because the mission is to, one of the missions is to allow the women to channel, to be able to hold and exude more of their soul radiance.
Yes.
Okay, this is about allowing that soul radiance to come through and helping them get out of their own way and get the blockages or whatever old conditioning out of the way so that that light is shining through like a light tower.
Yes. Ah, God, you are totally speaking my language. One of the things I just did with my ladies on retreat a couple of weeks ago when we were in Joshua Tree was I took them through a shamanic journey to tap into their the highest version of their medicine that wants to come through. And it's so interesting because it's the difference between when we're trying to do it from our human and trying to kind of like push what we think is our medicine out into the world. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill, and it's so freaking hard and it's so frustrating. And that's what usually draws women to quit, because they're like, I thought if this was really my calling, I thought it was supposed to be a lot easier. Why isn't it working? And you actually tap into the highest version, the highest frequency of what your soul came here for, the divine self, the divine medicine that wants to come through you. It gets to be kind of like a fountain instead. And it really becomes like, it just gets to flow through you as long as you're creating the vessel for it to come through, it's like exactly what you just said. Is anything wanting to come through as we kind of want to close out this space?
I feel this conversation is worth at least 2, 3, 4 times to keep coming back to it, because there's so much to unpack from this
100%.
Conversation that even if I go back and listen to it again, I would be like, oh, did that really happen? Did this really get channeled through? So I would say invite the audience to revisit this conversation often, especially when they're feeling confused or feeling like, which template should I take on? Like, I feel like because we came into this conversation with complete surrender, with the intention of co-creation, but with complete surrender. And this is very, very potent energy that is being transmitted. So
beautiful. And exactly, I had the same thought that I was like, when I share about this, I'm going to be like, you're going to want to listen to this a few times.
Like a few times.
It's not a one and done. And but yeah, I mean, and I even did do a little bit of preparing right before we hopped on, but I didn't do anything with it. And that's such a micro example of how powerful it is to co-create in the quantum realm. Like, you can prepare all you want, little human, for what you think you're going to do when it comes to creating with the quantum realm, co-creating with the quantum realm. But you got to be willing to be surprised, and you got to be willing to get out of the way and let what wants to come through you, instead of getting so attached to how you think you want this to go. So yes, I wholeheartedly echo and second what you just said. I love that idea too of maybe I'll just leave a little invitation here on a similar note, which is, let this be a touchstone. Let this episode of this podcast be something that you come visit, like Juliet just said, when you kind of need to reconnect to a larger version of yourself, a fuller version of yourself, a more whole version of yourself, regardless of if you know what that's supposed to look like. But just let yourself come in here, close your eyes, get out of your brain, drop into your body, let yourself receive and receive in a way this is a touchstone, reconnecting you to the divine self that you're meant to bring through. Oh my gosh, so fun. So fun. Thank you so much, love. This was a blast. It was also super uncomfortable, but not.
Yes, same here. Thank you so much. That was, I've never done a conversation like this, because I usually have an idea of what's going to come out. So that was just like, oh my God, I'm really letting myself go here.
And it's exactly what we've just been saying, which is it is a portal, it is a touchstone, it is an alchemical transmission. Like, it's all the things, and it has to be full surrender to what wants to come through in order for it to be that, really, in order for that medicine to come through. Oh, drop your, will you rattle off your website, and I'll do the same.
Okay, so it would be julietstang.com. Just literally my name, julietstang.com.
Perfect. And you can find me at heather-allison.com, HEATHER-ALLISON. All right, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.